What's good, everybody? Welcome. We're going to be recording episode 28, and you are listening to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable. Today's episode, we're talking about onboarding and offboarding youth leaders. But with me, I have two of the best youth leaders in the universe. We got Huey and we got Dorothy. And so please tell us, because everyone wants to know, where are you? Who are you? Where do you hail from? And what makes a good leader? Oh, there you go. Huey, let's go with you first.
Yes. Hello, friends. My name is Huey, and I'm currently on staff at Christ Central Presbyterian Church in Centerville, Virginia. And I've been here for over 12 years. It's been an amazing journey so far. And what makes a good leader? I think someone who is always teachable. Always teachable, just never giving up learning. You know, I love leaders like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Dorothy, to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Dorothy, Youth Director at Chinese Bible Church of Maryland in Maryland, and been here for just about 7 years and getting ready to return to Illinois. But something that I believe makes a leader is similar to Huey, and I'm not copying your answer, I promise, is knowing how to follow. Because sometimes I think I've had the impression that leaders know how to talk, but they don't necessarily know how to submit, or that even if they submit, it is with resentment. And I think to follow is ultimately, we're following Christ first, and that is through Christ's enablement that we can lead.
Yeah,
that's good. I appreciate that. I'll be your host today. My name is Justin. I hail from Texas, the land of briskets and
Brisket.
Briskets. Yeah. So we are talking about onboarding and offboarding leaders. Just as a quick aside, I loved my youth leadership team. I had some who were with me since the beginning, and so they walked through the trenches and the mountaintops with me for 17 years. And so they served with me from the beginning. And man, friends, like having a good team, that's just life-giving, isn't it? It doesn't feel like work. It's just, you get a good team that has like, that they know. I mean, that's the stuff that you're just like, man, I just want to do life with you guys, you know? And so we could talk about good leaders all day long. And so the first question I want to begin with is onboarding, right? Because I think everyone, and there's seasons that people come in and out, but for you guys, how do you discern whether someone is ready to lead? And do you ask them to jump on? Do you politely suggest they do it, or do you trick them? You know, it was like you just bait them into it. Dorothy, let's go with you first.
As a recipient of trickery, I choose to not use that method.
It's so effective, though.
Yeah, but it really strains a relationship, and I'm not about that kind of methodology. I generally start with a low risk invitation, and I know that that is the least efficient progression of getting more volunteers. But what I've seen is if I make an ask too quickly, they get intimidated, or because a lot of our younger folks respectfully have commitment issues, or maybe they just don't want to tie themselves down to too many things too quickly. I start with, hey, would you be interested in this one thing? I see this quality in you that I think you could really develop, or that you may have good synergy with those who are serving or those who would be served. Could you think about it and let me know within a couple of weeks if that's something you might want to move forward with? Like, yeah, okay, I'll think about it. And they can choose to accept, they can choose to decline. And given their response, if they accept, I'm like, I'm so delighted. Let's talk more of what you might have in mind. And then we can have that conversation. If they decline, I'd say thank you for your prayerful consideration. No hard feelings, and I pray the Lord's best for you and whatever you commit yourself to. We'll see each other again.
Yeah, no, and if I can understand where you're coming from,
Hmm.
that takes intentionality,
Oh, yeah.
right? So it's not flippant. It's like, oh, hey, we need some people. And it's not, so there's not a desperation necessarily out there, but
Mhm.
you are personally going to certain people and you are inviting, and there's a sense of, hey, but you're also giving them options
Mhm.
to do whatever. There's not a coercion. Do you tell them that? There's like, because I know some people when the pastor or somebody from the church leadership comes to them and asks them, they feel like they're stuck, right? They're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to disappoint, or I don't want to, yeah, like, but how do you, Dorothy, how have you helped them like to go, oh, like, I know that's not what we're doing here.
I provide a lot of disclaimers and reassurance up front, and I will be very honest, sometimes to a point of fault, but more importantly, I even if I have the understanding and the framework of like, oh my gosh, we are in like desperate need. But what's more important to me is like, are they able to use the gifts which God has given them? Or if they say like, I don't really know what my gifts are, I'm like, well, this is a perfect opportunity to explore what it could be. And
Mm,
so if you are wanting to take that courageous step, I am more than happy to walk with you through that and with our team. And I think yeah, you're right. It does require a lot of intentionality to approach this person because it's just more, again, like I said, efficient to make a global or widespread ask for whether it's an announcement from the church bulletin or from the pulpit or in an email. But I think persons respond better to personal invitations.
sure, sure.
And that is true of what Jesus did in his own ministry, right? He said, come follow me. He didn't say, hey, if anyone wants to come and follow me, just come, okay? Like, no, he identified a person and he said, by name, follow me, right? So I think
That's
in
good.
that model, I believe that it's so important to identify a person by name, but to affirm what I see or the potential that I may notice. And they can choose to walk forward or they can choose to walk in a different direction.
Mm,
But options are important because my goal is not by any means to shame them or to
yeah,
guilt them or to make them feel bad about my needs or the ministry's needs, but rather like if you feel compelled by the Lord to come into this ministry, we welcome you with open
yeah,
arms.
that's good.
But if there's any hesitance and if you're making a decision out of fear or worry or people pleasing, it's just going to be a no. That's one of
Yeah,
my personal rules. Just it's
yeah,
a no
yeah.
or not
No,
right
that's
now.
good. Because sometimes we can unintentionally be passive aggressive
Oh my gosh,
and
yeah.
throwing
Mhm.
like, oh, hey, like, I don't know how we're gonna run ministry. We're gonna need you. So I totally respect that. Huey,
Mhm.
same question. How have
Yeah.
you done this? How have you discerned? And then is it different in the Korean American culture? Like, are there
Mm.
certain nuances that we need to be aware of?
I don't think so. I mean, I really appreciate what, Dorothy said, and this idea of personal invitation, it resonates with me so much. For another reason is because youth ministry is a great place to serve.
It is.
Come on,
Amen.
man. Like it's a
We need it.
privilege to serve in it's a privilege to serve in youth ministry. And it's a area of the church where if you serve, like you're gonna grow, like so I have no shames about personal invitations. And it's not driven by need, although that is real. But I really believe youth ministry is a great place to serve and to grow, right? So over the years, I've learned to move away from kind of, let's make an announcement in the church wide, we're looking for volunteers. And I also believe the best people to recruit other leaders is those people who are already on your team,
Yeah,
Hmm.
your friends, the people that you know and love and are investing in relationally. um you know what serving in youth ministry is like in this particular context, so you can be the best evangelist, right? To really recruit others to serve in ministry because you've experienced it, you've tasted both the trenches and both the valleys and the mountaintops, right? So that's one of the other ways I've kind of leveraged other leaders to recruit others. And Um, yeah, again, there's no shame in recruiting others for ministry. And in the sort of the onboarding process, one of the questions I've learned to ask over the years is, what does your life outside of the church look like?
Yeah.
Meaning,
Mm.
do you have margins in your life to actually do this? Because this ministry is highly relational. I heard someone say in the past that 80% of serving a youth ministry is actually showing up. So do you have the bandwidth to actually show up in the life of our youth ministry? And again, you're asking that not only so that your students are taken care of and your ministry is taken care of, but you want to look out for them. This is such a
Yeah.
shepherding opportunity for you, for potential new volunteers, is like, this is an active way you're going to grow and you're going to change. And so do you have margins in your life to actually be invited into this space?
Yeah.
Mm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
That's good.
I've learned to ask that particular question over the years.
Do you know where you're called? Shortly after his conversion, Adoniram Judson discerned his call to international missions alongside several of his classmates at seminary. At Judson College, we want you too to discern your calling and prepare for a lifetime of disciple making in a vibrant Christian community. At Judson College, it is our mission to equip students to give their lives for the cause of Christ in the church, among the nations, and in every aspect of society. Through the courses, relationships, and culture you experience here at Judson, you will be well equipped to serve Jesus wherever he calls you, in whatever context or career. To learn more about our variety of degrees, world-class faculty, and enduring mission to equip students as ambassadors for Christ, visit judsoncollege.edu.
Yeah, one thing that we try to do in our youth ministry was, I know we had a lot of, I guess, parents and maybe even an older segment of the church population that wanted to serve students, but they didn't want to do the retreats and the camps. Because I think this is very important when we talk about youth ministry. It's not monolithic. It's not just, playing the games with the students. There's a lot of elements in student ministry that I think we forget. And so when we're looking at new leaders, there has to be different roles and positions. And so I remember the first thing we created when I started was a administration team. And it was made up of parents of current students that loved their youth but hated, they really didn't want to do the trips and the lock-ins and stuff. And we said, well, is there a way you can use your gifts to still serve students and families, but it didn't require you to, you know, stuff pizza in your face 24/7, right? So I think when you guys are, if you guys are student ministers there, think through other ways of getting people on your team that maybe not just be on the ground, but it could also be in the background as well, serving students. I think there's a lot of opportunities there.
Mhm.
All right. Another thing we wanted to ask was, okay, now that you onboard some of the students, or sorry, some of the student leaders or leaders who are helping your students,
Mhm.
um, have y'all cared for them, right? Because I think the joke, maybe even more so in the Asian American culture, is we are notorious for volunteering our leaders to death. We don't think that's right. Have you guys found the secret sauce of caring and loving for your leaders to where they find it enjoyable?
Mm.
And what have y'all done?
I think something I've tried to develop, and again, this is partially inherited, but partially trying to understand the culture that exists in my church, is being on the East Coast. We are very much recognized for being busy because everything is oriented on time and also commuting now that a lot of federal workers are back in office. Um, but I think I want to always be realistic in person's time commitments.
Hmm.
And because everyone has very limited time, including myself, right? And recognizing like what kind of life do they have outside of the church or a ministry. And if they don't have one, then I think that is where we have to reassess what is the, I hate to use this word, but the program or scheduling aspect of our ministry that impedes our volunteers as much as their own families if they're
Hmm.
parents. from resting or from spending time with their family or from spending time with their neighbors or coworkers, whatever it may be. So I think that um, I have made considerations and discussions with my team that we mirror a schedule that's similar to that of the children's ministry on Fridays. If your church has Awana, that's the one that my church also has. And they gather for the first 3 Fridays of the month, and then they break or rest for the remainder of the Fridays of the month.
Hmm.
So we've actually mirrored our schedule after that, in part because there are some families who have a child in the teens ministry and a child in Awana. Sorry, teen or a student in the teens ministry and then another in Awana. And it's just a lot of logistical burden to have parents driving back and forth or from two different places if the youth group ends up being at a different location, which we try to minimize. But more importantly, for our volunteers, a lot of them have been discussion leaders or Friday night presence as well as teaching Sunday school. And what I'm ultimately trying to do is separate our Friday and our Sunday groups. There's some overlap so that students have that familiarity, but I really don't want to see my volunteers not only burn out, but I don't want them to look at ministry and think like, ugh, I just have to show up and that's it. And
Mm.
that's all it is, right?
Mm.
I think at the point we start to find ourselves dreading partaking in ministry or heaven forbid being participants in the furthering of God's kingdom, like that's where we do have to take a step back or also reassess, like how is our ministry being organized, that it is it helping our volunteers to thrive or they're just showing up because they've made a commitment.
Yeah.
So I think there does need to be a balance between active serving but at least spending time together over meals. Maybe this means because as a team gets larger, you have to spend more individual time with persons and their families, and that's something I've tried to do. But of course, I've gotten a larger team, so it's a little harder to spend individual time with persons. But at least greeting, conversations here and there. But care can be difficult.
Yeah.
But I think that they do have avenues of care, and so I would almost consider me as a person who is here without family. I am more of uh, a supplementary form of care rather than their primary form of care.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
something I do recognize. And if anything, I'm just very grateful because they have cared for me more than I'm willing to accept at times. So it's been mutually just very edifying, but it is still challenging in its own ways.
Yeah. No,
Mm.
that's very important, especially if you're listening to this podcast and you're a younger youth minister or youth worker. Consider the life and the life rhythms of your volunteers, right? Because I remember jumping in early. I didn't even have a concept of like their kids going to school and practices and stuff. And I know they loved student ministry and they wanted to be there for everything.
Mhm.
We just made it very difficult for having our certain meetings and stuff like that. And so, and
Mm.
then you have the burden and privilege of shepherding your student leaders. I think
Mhm.
that's a thing that we can't forget. They're not just volunteers to serve students.
Yeah.
They're entrusted in our care so we can shepherd them as well. And so I think some of the
Yeah.
best strategies is working with your EM pastors or even KM pastors and to go, hey, how can we help them on their life stage so that wherever they serve, they're also equipped to do that. Huey, what
Yeah.
about you? How have you cared, or what are some things that you do to care for leaders and equip them and resource them?
Yeah, I love that question. And the expectation that our church has for anyone that comes through our doors, and regular attenders and members of our church is that they are part of community groups. And we
Mm,
call them community groups. Some people call it small groups or family groups. That's our expectation. That's where care and connection happens. And so if that's true, then our youth leaders are no exception to that.
right.
And just because youth ministry sometimes feel like we have a life of our own, for our youth. I never want to communicate that, our youth, your small groups, like that is your community.
Right.
No, no, that's not true. Like you actually need to be part of a community. We want that for you. So
Yeah.
therefore, about 3, 4 years ago, we actually started kind of our own community group as youth leaders. And I became a community group leader for that community group. So our youth leaders, we serve on Sundays and on weekends together, but we also meet like on a Wednesday night,
Yeah.
just so that we are living in community together.
And you're
It's
not
not,
talking about youth stuff.
you're not talking about youth
And I
stuff.
think that's key, right? You're not
Yeah,
talking
we're
about
not
business.
talking. No, this is not a youth leaders meeting. It's none of that. This is your community group, and
Yeah.
they actually have the option not to join that, but still serve in youth ministry to give that kind of freedom. But I would say 90% of youth leaders join that because timing works for them. A lot of other young adult community groups meet on the week on like Thursday night, Friday night, but that's when youth ministry gets busy. So
Yeah.
we actually meet on a Wednesday night to provide a space for them to connect and gives me an opportunity to care for them. So
Yeah.
the things that we do and share within our community group, if there are things that kind of is brought to my attention in those kinds of sharing times where I feel like, oh, I actually want to follow up with this person, I can, so it gives me an opportunity to be intentional with my leaders, to
Yeah.
really care for them and shepherd them through difficult seasons in their lives, right?
Mhm.
So community group is kind of our space to share and to pray for one another, not as youth leaders, but as believers, as
Yeah.
Christians. And then on top of that, from our sharing time, it just kind of alerts me to things that are just happening in their lives. And I just
Yeah.
kind of get to follow up with them. So that's
Yeah.
one practical way that I get to shepherd and care for them.
Yeah. No, that's good. Again, if you're a youth leader in here, please hear what Huey just said too, right? We're tasked with shepherding even our leaders. And I think
Hmm.
that's a whole nother level of ministry. It's again, it's hard, but it's a privilege. And that's the stuff when you look back at the ministry cycle, you're like, man, that's where real life on life happens in these intentional relationships.
Hey, Rated family, if you're listening to this podcast, then chances are you're someone who cares deeply about discipling the next generation. Whether you're a youth pastor, volunteer, or a parent in the thick of raising kids, we've got resources designed just for you. At Rooted, we've created curriculum and courses to equip you to walk alongside children and teenagers with confidence, clarity, and the gospel at the center. For youth ministers, we offer inductive Bible studies that keep Jesus front and center in every lesson. With 10 options for year-long studies on books of the Bible, 5 shorter topical studies, and a full scope and sequence, you can map out an entire discipleship plan for students in grades 6 through 12. If you don't know where to start, download our free scope and sequence guide. And we haven't forgotten our parents. Our family discipleship video courses are designed to equip moms and dads from birth through high school, covering everything from basic parenting principles to discipling teens. Use them in small groups, Sunday school, or at home. Whether you're leading from the pulpit or around the dinner table, Rooted's resources are here to support you every step of the way. Head to rootedministry.com and click on Curriculum and Courses to explore more and download your free resources today.
Okay, I know time's running out. We're in the middle of the life cycle of a leader, right? We're talking about onboarding in the middle as we care. And that could be sometimes 6 months, it could be 6 years, it could be 16 or 60 years. I heard of a church that they have youth leaders who've been consecutively serving for like decades, which is
Wow.
crazy awesome, right? And we're praying for that. But I think there's also a time where people do need to step out of youth ministry,
Yeah.
if not for a season, maybe to move on to something else. And so I'm gonna split this up, and I'm at it. So Dorothy, I'm gonna ask you the question of
Mhm.
how do we, in a healthy moment, help leaders transition out? That could be because of a life stage thing. That could be because of kids. That could be personal health. Just a sense of calling for another ministry. It's a healthy way, right? Like how can we as youth ministry or as a church help people transition out in a right way? And then Huey, I'm gonna throw you the harder one, or equally important. How do you transition someone out that you're like, hey, it's time to go, either because of a disqualification, these type of things, and how do we minister even in the middle of the exit process? And so, Huey, I'll let you go first.
Oh man, but praise God that I haven't had too many of those hard conversations in the past. I would say a couple of things that I do think are important is you want to have that conversation early.
Yeah.
And you want to go into that conversation. Well, number one, conversation needs to happen, but you want to have that early,
Mm,
and you don't want. My suggestion is that you don't want that first conversation to be you go in with the intention of this is your last day.
Right.
I think that that can do a lot more damage.
mm,
So you go in with the intention that there's always two sides to the story. You're sitting in front of somebody that has their version, their burden, their angst, their frustration, and you go in with wanting to just hear them.
Mm.
Let's listen to them. Let's have them be the center of attention, and just have them kind of uh, vent if they need to, but give them a space to just kind of communicate honestly. And then I would say um, have sort of a offboarding strategy, meaning that again, if that first conversation is not the only conversation that you're going to have, maybe put into place some markers like
Mm.
let's revisit this, a month later, and especially if you kind of need to talk to other people, or
Right.
if you need to bring other people in. If you're a male leader, pastor, director, and you're talking with a female, it's probably really helpful to have another sister in place, right?
mhm.
There just to be just for emotional support,
Right.
right? So have plans to revisit and have multiple conversations, right? So I think those are some practical things that you can do just to make sure that the offboarding process that needs to happen, like you have the best shot at letting it happen in the most amicable and loving and gentle way as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
Mhm.
good. I mean, because ultimately we want their hearts to be reconciled to the Lord first, right? And maybe they're
Absolutely.
just not in that space. And so, you can't serve students in a healthy manner when you're kind of broken. And maybe the best way to shepherd them is to just go, hey, like we recognize this. Can we talk about it? No, that's good. I appreciate that.
Hmm.
All right, Dorothy, you get same question, but from a different angle, right? How do you help people transition out without feeling guilt and without feeling shame and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, whereas Huey answered the question, how do you offboard on bad terms? How do you, in this case now for me, offboard on good terms, right? I think the biggest thing that I recognize as helpful is let there be a clear ending process. And I don't mean like
Mm.
a clean cut and like you're cut off or anything like that. What I mean is recognize what has gone into their role, their their season of serving, and affirm them for that, give thanks to the Lord for it, and be very direct too, right? I think sometimes in Asian churches, we just don't affirm people enough because, like, that's what they should be doing. So why do I need to affirm them? It's like,
Right.
Hmm.
well, even like in the scripture, the Lord will say when we enter heaven, like, well done, good and faithful servant, right? Hopefully. So he's not going to say, yeah, you should have done all that anyways. Lord. So I think having a clear ending and affirming all that has gone into a person's role and participation in a ministry is super important because it's to fully recognize
Mm,
that they've given their time, they've given their heart, they've demonstrated their faith, and that's also a way to model for them in maybe a future ministry or to our students, like, this is how we recognize you have done well,
yeah.
or
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, and we so are grateful for all that you have put forth in this team. And even for the ways that you may have failed, we've learned from it. You've learned from it. We're growing together. That's what's more important. And the
Yeah.
Lord is redeeming that. So one example I can give is, as it's been a couple of months since the summer wrapped up, and I had 6 student leaders from that batch, and 3 of whom were graduated seniors, now college freshmen. I took out the team for a meal, and it was simply a way to celebrate the end of the year. And at the same time, 2 of the 3 of those students that week were going to be relocating to different part of the country for college. And I was just very upfront to say, like, hey, team, you've done a really great job. And I know that some weeks were harder than others, but you still showed up. And I know that things have been tough to balance with school, but I admire and I recognize your faithfulness. And I do not take that for granted. So it's just, again, being very upfront about affirming their role and our relationship too. And like, this is our final meeting together. There's no action needed otherwise, but I do want to maintain this relationship. For our returning student leaders, I'll see you next week at orientation. But for the graduated seniors, like, you have no other responsibilities to this ministry. You will have access to our Google Drive, but you will not have editing rights, right? So it's even having some of those transitional administrative things is like, you get to see everything that we've done, but you will no longer have the like authority or autonomy to partake in the active ministry aspects. And that's partly because I don't want them to feel like just because they have that access, they have any sort of obligation to insert or to apply their previous ministry role. And that's not the intention there.
Right.
So yeah, just having a clear ending and being able to fully recognize, whether in writing or verbally, that they did a good job, or that I wanted to encourage them in ways to grow. And for adults, similarly, it's having those conversations. Like, how do you feel like you were able to grow or to be challenged in serving in this ministry? Do you want to continue? Sometimes it's enthusiastic resuming of that role, or sometimes it's like, you know what, I recognize maybe my heart's not in it anymore. And I think it's important for me to reassess where I am spiritually, because I can't keep showing up for kids if I don't show up for myself. It's like, you know what, I respect that and I support that. I want to pray for you, and we're not going to be strangers, but I think that this is an important decision that I will wholly back you up. And if someone asks otherwise, like, I will speak the truth, but in a way that does not discredit this person or the honesty that they've demonstrated.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I would throw in just an extra advice of, like, I think an exit interview of sorts, or a form for both sides. So like Huey's,
like, what do you want to change about
Huey's
the
exit? Yeah, sure. And allow them to have like their voice. And I think, again, as a minister, ask them, okay, even outside of this, how can we, either as a ministry or even as a staff, how can we continue to serve you, right? If this is no longer your church, do you need references or recommendations for somewhere else to be part of? And so I think still be pastoral, even in the exit process. And so, friends, I appreciate not only your thoughts and wisdom, but I guess the faithfulness throughout the whole journey. And I think, man, we can sit down forever to talk about how we love our leaders, because we were, for some of them, at the beginning and the middle and the end, right? And I think at some point we were the same way. Some people had to see us in the middle, in the beginning, and in our end. And then there's another cycle. And so how awesome is that we get to steward our times in this moment. And so, friends, again, thank you for listening today to the Rooted Asian American Youth Ministry Roundtable. We're glad you can join us. If you're a student leader or you're a church leadership, please love the youth leaders. That not only puts fuel in the tank of the youth pastor, but that just serves the church in general. So be a champion for those who serve. I mean, like, that's the best thing. If you like our content, we ask you to continue following us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also find us on Instagram at The Rooted Ministry. Until next time, be faithful to the gospel and be the salt and the light, no matter where you guys go. All right, see you guys.